It's been a long time. I've been very busy, but I am happy to say that I am going to be doing videos sporadically. So this particular video is going to be the first in a series on running a BECMI campaign that lasted for several years and what I learned from running it. Stay tuned. First thing that I want to talk about in this video is that I love BECMI, but I ran into some challenges running BECMI at levels above around 6. So I'm going to be controversial in several ways. First of all, I'm going to call any level above 6 high level. I know I'm going to get all sorts of flack for that on the comments because this is a version of D&D that goes up to 36th level very famously. But it's just a convenient label for my purposes, so please don't get all bent out of shape about it. Like, I guess theoretically, 18 or higher is high level, but I think 7th level and up is pretty powerful. All right, the crux of the matter is that at around 7th or 8th level, the game can get pretty volatile in the sense that if you have like a big boss fight or something, it can come down to random dice rolls, who wins and who loses. You can have a perfectly balanced fight, and things can go really radically one way or really radically the other. You could have a TPK on the one hand, or you could also have like something that was just way too easy where the bad guy just gets taken out super fast. So I'm going to talk about what I mean. There's sort of several kind of categories of this, but I want to kind of describe what I mean. I'm going to describe the finale that we just finished yesterday, and I'm going to describe some of the things that I did to cure it in BECMI, but also talk in broader OSR terms about how I would like to see the OSR go in ways that would make this less of a problem. Last session was the campaign finale. Well, not quite. I mean, we're thinking of maybe picking the game up again, but it was the story arc finale. So I had the arch villains of a story arc that led from, 1st level to about 8th level, be Rogan, Melissa, and Zelagar, who are characters that appear in Search of the Unknown module B1. So I thought that would be fun. And Rogan was a fighter in that module, but I decided that at a higher level, given the BECMI rules and the rules cyclopedia, that he could be an Avenger. So that's what I changed him to. I also decided that that Melissa, who's just his mistress in the original module, was actually he's actually a king and she's actually his queen. So they're actually married, and that she's actually a cleric. And of course, Zelagar is a wizard. So we had this final fight, and originally I was planning to have them be like 12th level each. And I thought that seemed balanced. I mean, we had a party of like, I think about 5 or 6 7th to 8th level characters. So we had one magic user, one elf, 2 separate clerics, 1 paladin. I allowed paladins at 4th level instead of 9th. Ditto for the other like higher classes, higher level classes. Just because I thought it would be more interesting that way. So we had quite a number of spellcasters. They had a lot of magic items, and nevertheless, it ended up being a really hard fight, and I made it easier than I was originally going to make it. The reason is that I play tested it ahead of time, and I'm really glad I did, because it turns out 12th level is way too high. Even though there's only 3 NPCs, the 8th level, like the 12th level, is way too high. So I knocked them down to 9th level. The other thing is, I was gonna have Zeligar have a ring. I forget what it's called, but there's this ring in the book where there's a ring of like spell like absorption or something, where like a certain number of spells, I think it's 2d6 spells at the beginning of each day, will be absorbed. It's a really powerful magic item, but I thought that would make it so that, you know, like they're gonna have trouble, like they're gonna hit him with silence, they're like probably gonna try to hit him with whole person and stuff like that, and try to take him out early so he can't cast any spells, and that would be sure be a bummer. And then I thought, no, I playtested it and that was way too hard. Like they just, you know, kicked ass without much contest. So I just made them 9th level, give them only a few magic items, and that proved to be a good fight. So Zeligar had a magic carpet, so it could fly around, so he was hard to get to. But I made everything else just be like smart spell casting. So before the fight, Zeligar had used Animate Dead to animate some skeletons, which is permanent, so you could very easily have skeletons galore to take with him to a fight. When they saw the characters approaching, the PCs approaching, he cast Summon Elemental. So he had an air elemental all ready to go. But that's solvable because there's a whole thing where the wizard can break concentration, and that's coming up. But it was a really friggin' awesome fight. The characters also befriended some mermen who helped them. And the mermen could kind of like take on the skeletons so that the PCs could concentrate on the NPCs. So it turned out to be a really hard but successful fight. The PCs did end up winning through. A couple of them almost died, but nobody actually died. It was not a TPK. I thought it was exactly the epic fight that I wanted. But, oh boy, I was scared going into it that it was either going to be a TPK or it was going to be way too easy. So let me unpack that. Using that fight to frame some of my ideas here, the first idea I want to bring up is area effect attacks, like for spells, like fireballs, ice storms, that kind of thing. Now, in BECMI, these cap at 20d6. Not kidding. Look it up in the Rules Cyclopedia. And that may have been a Rules Cyclopedia thing. Like, it goes up to 36 level, and Fireball says that it's level D6, and so is Ice Storm. And I want to check this. I'm sure people in the comments will be way ahead of me on this, but what I remember from the box sets before the Rules Cyclopedia is there is no cap. It's like if you're a 36 level magic user, boom, 36 D6. But 20 D6 is a lot too. So that means that if I had had 12th level characters, Zeligar would have been doing 12 D6 fireballs. Even as it is, a 9 D6 fireball is going to average 32 hit points. Alright, if you fail your save. 16 even if you make your save. Now, let's suppose you're smart enough to cast, like, Resist Fire on yourself. Like, I think Resist Fire, if I recall correctly, will reduce that by 1 per die. So, that's going to bring the average down to 23 if you fail your saving throw, and 11 if you don't, which is a little bit better, to be fair. But it was really devastating. There was one, the party magic user was taken down by Zeligar's fireball, and I think I seem to recall there was one character that was down to like 1 hit point afterwards because, you know, he failed a saving throw, and that's pretty nasty. I mean, basically it means if you fail your saving throw at that point, you could be dead. Now, fortunately, I had a house rule that you can go a certain amount negative before you're actually dead. So that meant that the magic user was just in a coma and a non-combatant for the rest of the fight. and bleeding out, so that some party member had to like run and bandage her. But still in all, it was like, holy shit. And it was a good thing that the PCs decided to space themselves out, which, to be fair, is a good tactic. Like, maybe, you know, you could push back on me and say, well, yeah, Ivan, that's why you space yourselves out. You don't let the wizard, you know, fireball the entire party. And he didn't. He just ended up fireballing 3 people. But even a 9th level wizard has several fireballs, potentially. Right? So, and an Ice Storm at 4th level is also level D6. It's an ice attack, so you need to have a different sort of resistance or whatever to defend against that. Right? It's a smaller area of effect. I have no idea why it's 4th level and Fireball's 3rd level, because it's like a lower area of effect. It's like 20-foot square, whereas Fireball is 40-foot diameter circle, but whatever. Point being, okay, I think it's 3-dimensional, so it's, you know, cube versus sphere, whatever. Point being, it's still like 96 at 9th level, right? And of course, you know, the magic user and the elf in the PC party have their own fireballs, which are throwing at like 7th or 8th level, so 7d6, 8d6, something like that. So of course they're setting that at the wizard, trying to take the wizard out, which is really devastating too, because, you know, if the NPC fails the saving throw, that might take them out. So it's kind of a toss-up, like, you know, who's going to take whom out? Somebody's going to take somebody out really quickly, potentially, is the point. So the next subject I want to bring up is instant death spells. So the number of these come up. At 4th level, there's a cleric spell called Neutralize Poison. The reverse is poison. It has to touch the person, but the way I roll on that is it ignores armor. So it's an easier to hit roll. It's just based, like, their dex modifies their armor class at that point. If they touch the person gets a saving throw. So there's 2 rolls involved, so it's a risky spell. Okay, to be fair. There's also a 5th level cleric spell called Finger of Death, which is the reverse of Raise Dead, which is a ranged spell that does the same thing. So you don't have to make it to hit roll, it's just a saving throw. Now, this actually happened with the Party Paladin. The Party Paladin rolled a 6, he needed an 8. Now, fortunately, he had both Bless cast on him by the party cleric, as well as he went into the battle with Protection from Evil cast on himself. So, what that meant was that he was at +2 for his saving throw. That turned out to save his life, because he needed an 8 and he got exactly an 8 on that roll. But let's pause for a second and think about that. That's good tactics, and good on him and the party for using good tactics. But if he needed an 8 or higher to make his saving throw, that means a 7 or less would fail. That means 7 out of 20, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is 35%. That means there's a 35% chance of just dying instantly. Okay, now obviously that's less because they have to make it to hit roll. So, you know, I don't know what that brings it down to. But still in all, I mean, I don't think the hit roll was worse than 50%. I think it's probably better than 50%. So maybe it was a 20% chance of killing the person. But still in all, that's a lot. And Finger of Death would have been a 35% chance. Okay? So what that means is that you start getting these instant death sorts of things that can just instantly kill a PC or turn them to stone or whatever, right? And that is pretty nasty. So you might say, well, no, Ivan, wait a second. There are a few spells that people can cast to counter this. There's the famous Silence 15-foot radius. If you cast that on the party wizard, then the wizard gets a saving throw, but if failed, the silence moves with the wizard, and if they make the saving throw, the wizard can move out of the area, but has to move. All right. So that's a pretty good way to defeat a spellcaster. Another way is there's a second level cleric spell, which is Hold Person, which will affect 4 people within range. And we checked this. There's no area effect. There's a range, which is 180 feet, but anybody within 180 feet, any 4 characters can be affected by it. So, so you might say, well, you could just cast Hold Person on the wizard as well, or on all the spellcasters of the party. It's probably less than 4. But keep in mind that the bad guys, if they're NPCs, are probably going to have that too. Which means that, well, both sides have it. Okay? So that's kind of a problem. So this brings me to what's so swingy about higher level fights, particularly with NPCs, which is that to some extent, the 2 most important roles in the combat are initiative, first and foremost, the very first round of initiative, and secondly, saving throws. Okay? And there's not much room to modify those. Now, I use group initiative because it's faster, which is just a d6. I think the only exception is I think halflings get a +1 to that d6 roll, which is awesome. Good reason to play a halfling. But what that means is that the clerics and magic users in the party and elves are going to have like a 50-50 chance of being able to get those spells off, like Silence and Hold Person, that are going to mitigate the spellcasters of the other party, right? And so whoever gets the jump is going to be able to cast that opening Hold Person or that opening Silence. And what that means is that there's sort of a high chance that whoever wins initiative is going to have a really major advantage, because if you could neutralize the spellcasters, you don't have to deal with those area effect spells, which are thermonuclear, and you don't have to deal with these instant death spells, right? So that's absolutely huge. The other thing is that saving throws go up as you level up, which is nice and all, but your opponents are also going to have comparable or better saving throws than you are. So it's not like there's a whole lot that you can gamify to do this. Like you could have, if you use individual initiative, I think dex factors in. So, okay, so you give your guy a high dex. That's cool. Good reason to give your spellcaster a high dex, particularly if they're a cleric. There's definitely, as I alluded to be fair, there are spells you can cast before the fight that last for some time, like Bless and Protection from Evil, and those are definitely worth doing. There are definitely tactics you can use. You can have your guys spread out to avoid area effect attacks. Certainly true. So there definitely is a tactical aspect to this, and so I want to just call that out because I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that it's completely and utterly unfair. It's completely utterly ungamified. I'm just making an argument that it is pretty swingy, though, so that it's really kind of hard to tell whether you're going to have things be too easy or have a TPK. In this particular fight, our characters, our PCs, were really worried they were going to lose at one point. Like they really got discouraged. And I was worried too. I thought, oh my God, it's going to be a TPK. And then they won, which was great. But when they fought the Master of the Desert Nomad series, they killed him really quickly because they got the jump on him. Now, they got for those of you who know the module, there is, I'm not going to give anything away, but there is like a version of the Master that you can meet is a lot easier to take down. So there's like a special condition under which you can like have the easy version of the fight, and they got to that condition. So to be fair, that's kind of on them that they got that easy version, and the hard version of the Master is really tough. But still in all, the point being that, it's swingy. I love BECMI. I have really fond memories of it when I was a kid and middle school and high school. Is kind of the first game. I think technically the first game of D&D I played was BX, but we didn't know there was a difference at the time. So BECMI was, for all intents and purposes, the first version of D&D I played. I love it. I think there's a lot to recommend it. So what can we do about this, both within BECMI and in the OSR going forward? So here are my suggestions, because I don't think that this is such a big problem that it's not worth playing. I love BECMI, okay? Within BECMI, there are several things that DMs can do to make this a little bit less swingy so that it's more gamified. One is give the players lots of choices. This is always a good tip for GMs. So one thing that I did is I decided that Rogan has this weird code of honor, so he starts out saying that he would settle the entire dispute with one-on-one combat with any champion that they choose. They chose not to, first of all, because they didn't believe him. But secondly, because they thought he'd probably win, which they're probably right. So, you might say, well, it's kind of not really a very fair choice, but it's like another option, right? And the other thing is that the goal of the bad guys was to get these dragon stones, and you put them on these altars to summon these dragons. And so what the party could also have done is figured out which one of them had the dragon stones. It turned out it was Melissa the cleric, because she's the cleric. She's the one who's going to be, summoning the dragons as part of this religious cult of dragons that I decided that they worship the moon dragon, which is a real being in BECMI. So if they figured that out, they could have had, I don't know, the party thief sneak up and pickpocket her or something like that, get the dragon stones and leave, or do something around that whole concept. Maybe they could have maybe cast locate object to find them. There's some things they might have done that would have still been a tough fight, but they might have, if they had an objective to just get the dragon stones away, and live to fight another day or something like that, or maybe take one of the 3 NPCs out and then get out of there, or something like that. That might have worked. So they had options. They chose to go for the full-on fight. But the other thing is I also gave them several magic items, which were hard to get. I didn't make it easy, but I gave them the opportunity to get a few magic items that would help. One is they got to Zeligar's alchemy lab, and I had this thing where Zeligar reverse labeled all of his potions. So there's a ton of magic potions there, but protection from fire was actually protection from ice, and protection from ice was actually protection from fire. And ditto with absolutely everything else. It was a one single rule that applied to absolutely every potion in the alchemy lab, because Zeligar thought he was so smart by doing that. And fortunately they figured that out. They got the potions, they experimented with them, and they got to figure out, and I left some clues for them for this, and they figured out, okay, I need to drink protection from ice in order to be protected from fire and not get hit by the fireballs, right? So that was cool. I also put a couple of suits of armor that had resist fire, resist ice. So there's a resist fire plate mail and resist ice plate mail. I had a few other things like that. I had a protection from fire scroll that just completely protects anybody within a 10-foot radius of the person who reads the scroll from the fireball. They didn't actually end up making as much use of that as I thought they would, because the guy who read it ended up flying away from the rest of the party because he had a flight potion still active, and decided he was going to try to take out the wizard. So it turned out to not be all as effective as it could have been, but at least it was good for him, and it gave them a fighting chance. They could have used that, but they had to find those magic items in the final dungeon, so they had to take some risks to get those, but they did take those risks, and they did get those, and there were a few other magic items they didn't get, but the point is that I put the sorts of things they needed to win the fight in there, and they made good use of them, so that was really good. The other thing is Gauge the tactical abilities of your players. If they are really veterans of old school D&D, then don't coach them. If they don't need coaching, they're going to already think of things like spread the party out. But if they are not so good on old school D&D, like, coach them on some things, you know, probably before they get to the boss fights, right? Like as soon as fireballs start being thrown around, coach them on, like, hey guys, you know, I noticed you got hit by that fireball there. Maybe next time, like, you might want to spread out or something. Like, don't make it too easy. Like, don't make it like a walk in the park. Don't make it so they just, you know ahead of time, oh, we shouldn't do that. But kind of like give them some coaching. You could even use a mentor NPC to do that. So you could even say, like, you know, like, you remember Party Wizard, you remember when, you know, the wizard when you were apprenticed to was teaching you, he always said, like, if you ever, you know, meet an evil wizard, like, have your party spread out so that only one of you at a time can be hit by the fireball or something. So there's a lot of things that the good DM can do to kind of mitigate this, and there's a lot of good tactics that can be used to mitigate this, and the party did a really good job. So it's not totally like a failure of BECMI, but it's a problem of BECMI that DMs need to learn how to deal with, and it might, for some tables, be a reason that they might not like BECMI over about 6th level. So, what can we do in the OSR in general today with all the new OSRs that have come out and stuff like that? So if you're more interested in playing like a new OSR than an old version of D&D, what are some tweaks that can be made in the OSR community that would mitigate some of this stuff? One thing that I've already seen in things like Ben Milton's Knave, for example, or also Ben Milton's there's a game he has with Maze Rats. That's the game that has rats in it. Is both of those magic systems are more about, like, doing neat, nifty things with your magic than, like, doing thermonuclear or instant kill type stuff. So one cure for this might be to change the magic system away from like what's often called the Vancian magic system, which has the spell level slots and stuff, to have something that you can do more often, maybe on a skill check, so that you could cast a spell maybe any time or something like that, but you have to make a skill check to do it, something like that, but make the spells be weaker so that they're just sort of like these nifty things. They might do some amount of damage, which you could still have area effects and stuff, but it's not going to be quite at the same level. You're not going to have like instant death spells. You're not going to have like these really powerful area effect spells. It might be just more like a minor kind of a thing, or maybe, you know, I don't know. That's something for people to think through. But I think if you did that, it would make it so that wizards would still be powerful, and other spellcasters would still be really powerful, but there would still be sort of more of a sense that magic is this sort of interesting thing that you can, if you think outside the box and you use it effectively, it could be like this really awesome thing, but it's not going to be like something that's just like a mass destruction weapon that's just going to like annihilate a whole group of people in the first round, right? Or instantly kill somebody, right? So that's kind of what I'm leaning toward in the future of the OSR. If you've enjoyed this video, I wonder what you think in the comments. You're free to disagree with me, but please be polite. Let's dialogue rather than naysay. And if you think like I'm totally wrong, and you have some constructive criticisms about how a game like BECMI can be run at these higher levels when these more powerful spells are being flung around, I'd love to hear it. If you've also experienced this problem, I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear what you've done as a DM to solve this problem. All right, guys. Well, as always, keep dreaming.